am Lisa Wright. This is my co-host Giles Bidder.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! And today we have our third guest on this podcast, which is Dan Smith of Bastille. We got Dan to bring in a song, a photo and an object that showed key moments of his youth. And I feel like Dan's youth was sort of quite polar mixed bag of very jolly festival cavorting and sitting in his room being a little dweeb making music. And I like
his words.
People contain multitudes. But yeah, I think he painted quite an evocative picture of exactly how you can see how he became a musician, I think.
Yeah, he's in his own lane, isn't he? I feel like he didn't really care what other people thought of him growing up. He was that person to go home and bury himself in music, put the headphones on and escape to that world where the rest of us benefit from it, which is pretty nice, isn't it?
Exactly. And then he escaped to Glastonbury every year, and now he's playing Glastonbury all the time, atop the pyramid, atop the pizza. So, yes, from his childhood bedroom to the fields of Glastonbury, this is the newest episode of Before They Knew Better, DIY Magazine, and Dan Smith from Bastille. When you get home from touring, like, do you have any sort of rituals, like the first thing that you do when you get back?
Just see everyone. I make a habit of not properly unpacking until the next tour starts, which is always really great for feeling settled. I think the main thing that I miss London, and I miss like friends and family. So it's just, as soon as I get back, it's like a binging on everybody that I know and trying to see them as much as possible. This time I happened to sleep 15 hours, which is more sleep than I've had in as long as I can remember. So that was incredible. But I wish that was the norm. Everyone seems to always get back and get a cold, I guess, because like the adrenaline runs out. It's pretty cool being in a band, guys. Yeah. I grew up in South London and have lived here all my life. And apart from when I went and lived in Leeds for a bit to go to university, but other than that, like most of my adult life, you know, very fortunately, we've been off for huge chunks of time. So I think we and I have always really obsessed over coming back. Like I think having the privilege of getting to travel allows me to see how amazing London is in so many ways. And as I've grown up, you know, people who've lived here have left, and people who leave London love to then like kick it after they've gone and be like, oh, how could I ever have lived in that absolute hellhole? But I fucking love it here. It's like culturally we're so spoiled, and and everyone I know is here, so I can't really imagine being anywhere else. We had quite an eventful tour. We had a bus crash.
Oh shit!
I got tonsillitis. I had to cancel a few shows. It was it's been an interesting period, but we're back. And I'm excited to be home.
When you're touring these days, now that you're like a seasoned pro at this, like, are you a bit more sort of, okay, early nights, get the kombucha out, or are you still quite a big party band?
Whoa, I'd say definitely both. Every time I go on tour and I'm like, right, I'm not going to go out, I'm not going to drink, I'm going to look after myself. That's when I lose my voice. So there's a weird, like, there's no correlation for me. Like some of the funnest runs we've had in terms of, you know, just really, really good nights out and exploring and stuff. Those are the ones where my voice seems to be like bulletproof. And then bizarre. So there's almost like an anti-correlation between the two. But yeah, we still, you know, we all still live on a bus together when we tour, and it's really nice to spend that time and get to go back to cities, you know, this time kind of across America, and it was around Europe and the UK, and do and see stuff we've not done before, like revisit mates.
Nice. And
yeah, like definitely big nights out are still quite an important part of our touring experience. But also, like, I'm aware that, you know, I guess getting tonsillitis this time round made me very aware of, like, I guess just letting people down. You know, I don't want to. We cancelled. We had to basically cancel a few shows, and it's the first time we've ever really done that. And there's obviously, like, it's interesting seeing loads of younger artists come through and you know, and cancel tours and make those decisions based on their well-being, has been a real, like, it's we've sort of looked on in admiration, because I think we definitely come from the, like, just plow on through it school of touring, where even if I'm feeling really rough and I can barely sing, we've still, like, gone on and done the show. That's not to say that that's the right thing to do. That's just, like, those are the decisions we happen to make. So it was interesting this time, making the decision to not do them when I physically couldn't, and just seeing that that's okay, and that everyone's really supportive of that, and, you know, you can only do so much. Was a really interesting lesson, and one that I definitely should have learned more than 10 years ago. But you know,
I mean, this is the podcast about what you were like as a teenager, those kind of formative years where you make your crew. I saw a funny meme about, a 15-year-old boy will find 2 or 3 other mates and stick with them for life. That's like so many bands, right? I mean, what were you like as a teenager? Where were you hanging out in London? Where were your spots?
Underage, we used to just drink in parks a lot, which was obviously really culturally fascinating, and definitely taking advantage.
Highly illegal.
Taking advantage of the joys of London. Yeah, so there's a lot of car parks, a lot of mates' houses, and then I started to go to, like, I guess, Fabric a fair amount, which was really fun.
I was always scared of Fabric. Fabric's quite a scary.
Oh, me too. The mythic staircase. So that was really fun, and then I guess just, like, gigs and festivals. As I in my later teen years, spent a lot of time at, like, Reading and going to Glastonbury and various different gigs. I guess your teenage years span quite a lot of time, so there was, like, just me and like you said, you cling on to the same, like, 4 or 5 mates, and we were sort of pretty contented, slightly nerdy outcasts, but I was a real film geek, but we also just liked having a good time, and we used to go to, like, new metal gigs as well. That's really cool.
I go to that new metal club that you'd always see the same person flying it outside every gig at, like, the Astoria or the Borderline, and it was at the Underworld. I think it might still be going. Nassin, I think it's called.
Never went. No. Me neither. Never went. No. If there's anything cool or interesting happening while I was a teenager, I wasn't there.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
In your bedroom, and when those things were pumping off, do you spend a lot of time?
I was running, like, Scream trilogy fan forums and writing depressing piano songs that I never wanted anyone to hear. Me and my mates had a band, but all it really meant was going around Stu's house and just sitting around. I think all the instruments, like, were in different rooms, so it was just a sort of excuse to hang around doing nothing.
Were you quite an ambitious kid? Were you kind of like, did you have big ideas?
Absolutely not at all. I never wanted to be in a band, and it never occurred to me to, I think my love and obsession, nerd wise, as a kid was films. I loved, like, I started with horror at a worryingly young age, and then sort of did a deep dive down through to, like, David Lynch, and I guess interesting, weird, like, world cinema via, like, Kubrick, but through to, I don't know, Lars von Trier and anything and everything in between. If it was weird, I loved it. And that was pretty much my entire personality. I didn't really, I didn't read books about musicians or think about what touring was like. And so when we were lucky enough to suddenly be a touring band and that took over our lives, it was all super new to me. So yeah, as a teenager, like, I made music and I made songs, but it was very much just like I guess it was like my equivalent of playing video games. It's like what I did by myself and, like, in the evenings or whatever. It wasn't like, I know a lot of people who start bands or start music for, like, social reasons, or it was really just a thing I did. So yeah.
But yeah, you were saying about films there, and, like, while some of the stuff that you were referencing was obviously a bit more sort of niche and cool, the film that you chose to bring in was the Scream 3 bootleg.
Yes.
Yes. you've also mentioned. I mean, what was the? I mean, I love that you've specifically chosen Scream 3 and not even the original one, because I feel like normally the idea goes original's the best, every sequel after gets like a little bit worse, whereas 3's the one for you.
It's not the one for me. It's by far and away the worst of all 7 Scream films. Like, I'm not sugarcoating it at all. But at that point, at that Donnie Darko loving point in my life, where like Donnie Darko, Requiem for a Dream, and the Scream films, it was so exciting for me. Like I had a website. I had a fucking Scream website. Like, that's how into it I was.
Wait, so you built and maintained a Scream website?
Yeah, man.
Talking like fan forum.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'd make like mock Scream 4 posters for like a film that didn't exist yet. Like I was that level of cool.
What was the URL?
I don't remember. But this is the thing. It sounds like I'm making it up. I do not remember, and I've dug. I'm sure other people who are better could dig very quickly and successfully. But my claim to fame is that I did a really bad 4 with the face of like Neve Campbell like behind it, like, and I remember making it in Microsoft Paint because that's about as far as my Photoshop skills went. And it was on my website that I lost the access to the website, can't remember what it is, blah blah. But that 4 re-emerged when actual Scream 4 came out, and I'm convinced that they found it and were like, oh, let's use that. So Scream 3, it just came at a time where I was like a teenager and didn't have access to, I guess it was obviously pre-streaming, and it just having access to a lot of culture was harder back in those days. You know, I remember becoming obsessed with David Lynch, but you couldn't get Twin Peaks, the TV series, at all. You just couldn't get it anywhere. So you'd have to like find old videos or bootlegs or whatever, or, you know. And so when Scream 3 came out, it's probably the most excited I've ever been in my life for something to happen.
Only to be seriously let down. Well,
no, I think I loved it because I had some serious like rose-tinted glasses on. But and I think I was such as I'd probably read the script before I saw it. I don't know. That's how deep this went. But I remember, I think like a friend's mum's like cleaner's boyfriend sold bootleg videos and was like, oh, I've got a copy I've got a copy of Scream 3. And somehow, I mean, that's how obsessed I must have been. It made it to the grapevine that would be a thing that I would want. So I remember like buying or being given this VHS that was literally someone with a handy cam in the cinema, filming it, grainy, bad, can't hear anything, can't really see anything. And I like bringing it into school like anyone would give a fuck, being like, I've got Scream 3. I was so heavily invested, like there was no way I couldn't not love it.
Were you too young to go and watch it in the cinema then? Is this why you
Yes, I was too young to see it in the cinema. I think it also was at a time where stuff came out at quite different times around the world. So it would have been out in America, right, and then it wouldn't have come to the UK for like 6 months or something. These were tough and unrelatable times. But I can't say it's because I love the film. In recent years, when they started releasing new Scream films, I've made a lot of my friends watch them in anticipation of then dragging them to the cinema to watch the new ones. And it's quite an interesting, like, confronting experience watching something you gave that much mental space to as a child, watching it as an adult with a slightly more critical eye. Scream 3 definitely didn't hold up at all.
Didn't hold up.
But it made me remember how excited I was at the time, and I think there's something about that sort of young to mid teenage obsession that you can have. I don't know why our brains just pick these things. I mean, it makes me cringe so hard thinking back about it. And there's lots of objects I could have chosen to define that era of my life. But if I'm being honest, it didn't get much more exciting for me at the age of, I don't know what I was, like 14 or whatever. But getting that Scream 3 VHS was wildly exciting.
I really want to know more about this website as well. So, like,
I know,
anyone else go on it? Was it a thing where you'd actually managed to cultivate like a little pocket of the internet of like other Scream nerds talking to you, or was it just you talking at no one?
I imagine it was me talking to a very large absent void. But yeah, there was a community of people for sure. it was also at a time where, you know, the internet was at a stage, but any scraps of information about a film, like it was pre-social media. So like a photo being released from a film would be like an entire page in Empire magazine. And if it came, you know, one or two like from the set stills coming out was like wildly exciting in a way that now you'd be like, well, the entire cast are live blogging it all on Instagram, so no one is going to be like.
I mean, you've got to have a gateway, right? Like, it's like, you know, when you ask people what their first album was, it's like no one's first album was like a canned B-sides album. It was, you know, Oasis or something like that. And then you have to start with the things that feel accessible, and then you kind of go a little bit further left or right, and then you kind of, you know, you go down those wormholes. Like, I think like, Scream's great for, like, you know, getting you involved on the first level, and then you can go as nerdy as you like from there.
And I guess musically, I wasn't on forums and stuff, but I did definitely take a hard pivot away from new metal when I realised that I just didn't like it and was only listening to it because everybody else was. And then somehow landed on Regina Spektor and Anthony and the Johnsons as my two absolute favourite artists. And and I guess those were my first experiences of really loving albums that no one else I knew gave a fuck about, and that was fine. Like, you know, they were really personal albums to me. I remember like John Kennedy on XFM used to do full album playbacks in the evenings, and again, it's almost weird that I can't sleep, seeing as I used to go to sleep with the radio on. So like often it would be John Kennedy. Like, it's so mad to think that I was trying to sleep with like a commercial radio station that pumped out adverts every 5 minutes and like really loud jingles and that played alternative music. No wonder my entire sleep pattern is completely upside down. I was nauseatingly honest for you guys with the stuff I picked. I could have heavily curated it and made myself seem like a much more interesting, well-rounded and cooler person than I am.
Well, look, this sets us up for your photo. Could you describe what's in the photo for us, Dan?
It is me in a probably highly flammable tiger onesie, crouched down in a tent at quite a muddy, rainy Glastonbury festival, doing what I guess can only be described as the impression of a tiger with my face and hands. Yeah.
And is that liquid acid that you're drinking?
No comment.
It does look quite pissy.
Yeah, it does. I think it was probably like old decanted red, like white wine or something, or like some whiskey probably whiskey and white wine. I don't know. It's Glastonbury. Who knows?
What are your memories when you think back? Like, what are your moments the flashback moments you get from that festival that year?
I think that was the year that we sort of first played, and I had the ticket. I bought my ticket. So I'm obsessed with Glastonbury, and I've sort of ever since first going the year that Amy Winehouse and Jay-Z played on the Pyramid stage, where me and my friends just waited down the front on the barrier for the entire day until those gigs, which was amazing because those are the two people I most wanted to see, and they played back to back. So that was pretty amazing. I think it was the following. Basically, I've since the beginning, me and my mates, when we first went, got completely obsessed with that weekend, and you know, would do the like laptops and phones out every year, trying to get tickets, fail, try again, resale, maybe get them, maybe not. So it was always like, when we started the band, it was a big deal to me that we got to play there. And there's this organisation called...
It's huge.
Yeah, well, there was this organisation called Strummerville, which was set up in sort of memory of Joe Strummer, like by his family and people associated with his world. It's kind of a charity and organisation for young musicians, and they offer, I guess, like a platform as well as advice and encouragement and you know, all that kind of stuff. Which for me, as someone who, you know, didn't really know other people that were making music apart from a couple of my friends, you know, had no idea what the music industry was, how it worked. It was just this kind of ephemeral thing that sat over there. In, you know, in my mind, it was like old white men in suits was what the music industry was. So, you know, if you ever saw someone coming to a shit pub you were playing, in a suit, you'd be like, they must be from a label. Yeah. No, it's just someone that's finished work that day. So we had the chance to play via Strummerville at their campfire
Yeah,
which is amazing. And there's like a little wooden stage, or there was at that point. It's moved around a few times, but they were like, "We'd love you to come play, but we can't." I think they could get us one ticket, and there's the four of us in the band. So I had bought my ticket. I think I'd got two. One, I was there with my friends, but one for me and one for one of the other guys. And then Stromerville gave us one ticket, and then there was an empty space. So Kyle basically, via some connections, Kyle is our keyboard player in Bastille. He, in order to get into that Glastonbury, he had to climb into a sofa with a guy that he'd never met before. The sofa was covered up, put in a lorry. The lorry came into Glastonbury on the Sunday night or the Monday, got unloaded, and he basically had to sleep on the floor of a gazebo for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I think we played on the Thursday night or the Friday. And then I was there as a punter, and then Woody, our drummer, came in his van with all our gear in the back. So we had to go find him in one of the car parks, do an hour's walk with carrying all the gear in pretty thick mud. It basically was just, as it should be, it was a lot of effort. But it was an amazing first experience. Poor Kyle, he was an absolute shell of a person by the time we played. But we thought, we were like, how can we be interesting? Oh, let's two of us randomly wear tiger onesies. That'll really... I don't know.
Right, that's where the onesie comes in. This was I'm not a get me dressed up. I'm wacky kind of person at the best of times. So it's not like the norm for me to be dressed up as an animal.
This is your This is your stage get up.
Yes. It's a wonder to everyone, including myself, that I'm still allowed to make music.
No, we support it.
In the first place.
We support misled decisions, missteps. That's what it's about.
So I think Kyle and I were in these tiger onesies, and I remember there being a conversation. Woody and Will were like, "Well, what are we going to do? We're going to look mad if we're just in our normal clothes and you guys are in tiger onesies." It's I don't know if it's you that's going to look mad or us that's going to look mad. Anyway, somebody somewhere found boiler suits for them. So the two of them were in boiler suits. The two of us were in tiger. Anyway, we did that show by Stromerville Campfire, and then we did another gig up the hill at the Rabbit Hole. So my memories of that year are just carrying heavy gear in the rain up and down hills through a really muddy Glastonbury. But both gigs were great. It's brilliant. They were both really fun and very kind of ad hoc, and I really speak to that time when we first started, where we were just doing anything and everything to get a gig and sleeping on floors and cramming us and everything we could into a car and driving around the country and whatever. It was a nice time. It was quite a naive time. I think a lot of the first few years of us going full time with it were quite naive. I didn't know anything about how things worked, so it was all firstly going through it as an anxious wreck. Obviously we had each other, but it was all kind of new to all of us, and figuring things out and having these mad experiences, but not really being prepared for them. So it was a lot of that.
Just working it out as you go along.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
If you're a big sort of Glastonbury devotee, are there any particular treasured memories of your times? I mean, everyone's got those sort of weird Glastonbury stories where it's you go around a corner and you suddenly see an entire naked hot tub of people or something like that. It's such a mad place, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's your favourite memories from your time there?
That's impossible. I mean, there've been so many mind-bendingly life-changing gigs, so many fun nights out in the in the nighttime areas. This year there was a sort of chunk in the afternoon when there wasn't anything that we wanted to watch, and we just did the full lap in the sunshine, which I'd never done before in the daytime. So it's just really nice to see how much work and effort and creativity goes into every single little corner of that place. It's too hard to pick. Some of my favorite moments, some of my most embarrassing moments, some of the most ridiculous moments have happened in that place. Meeting random people, seeing amazing shows, missing amazing shows. I think probably quite a lot of the sort of fictional list of Glastonbury regrets is probably quite long. it's also always interesting getting back and watching it on TV and being like, oh, that's what happened. Okay, that wasn't my experience.
You go for the full weekend, even when you're playing now.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I'm a nightmare to everyone in our band crew and sort of team, because it's quite busy prime real estate festival time. You know, if you wanted to, you could be doing 3 or 4 different festivals around Europe that weekend, and I'm like, sorry guys, I've got
it's not happening.
Put a little ring fence around that. I love it. And so if, you know, in the years that we've been fortunate enough to play, you know, either secret shows or our main stages, I always ask nicely if we can play on the Friday or Thursday to get that bit out of the way.
One person you wouldn't see at Glastonbury is a certain purple, pink, yellow spotted.
See where you're
going. Would you say he's an animal?
I don't know what the fuck he is, but you know, we're living through a perpetual retro culture, so you never know. He could. It wouldn't surprise me in a genuinely possible version of reality that he would pop up on a stage somewhere and get a bunch of people really excited.
Could you introduce your third pick?
So I was asked to pick a song from my childhood. When I was growing up, my sister had really good taste in music, and I used to, you know, she's older than me, so I used to copy a lot of what she did and think that she was the barometer of cool. So I loved a lot of the music that she loved, which, you know, my memories of like the first single that I owned, I think it was like, It's Killing Me Softly by the Fugees, is my memory of it. So every time people ask you, like, what's the first piece of music you ever bought? It's that. I, just in thinking for this, was like, I think in reality it was the Mr Blobby novelty Christmas song that went to number 1. And I guess I picked it because, like, I've just in interviews, in not wanting to talk about myself, I've probably got quite a lot of mileage out of saying how much I love the Fugees and Lauryn Hill, and how massive and important, you know, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill and the Score were, you know, for me growing up, which they were, and, you know, in terms of where you find your music and who you get it from. But I do.
This is not the show to be that cool person.
But like, I basically haven't checked the dates, because I'm pretty sure it would definitely be Mr Blobby that was my first piece of music that I owned. And I was talking to our managers, one of whom is Welsh and one of whom is American, and obviously the American manager was like, what is this?
What is a Blobby?
So I sent him the video, and it was a real reminder of quite how insane it was. And just Mr Blobby as a concept, everything about it, the song, the sound of the song, the video, the song itself, it's so strange. And this is, again, a little bit like with my Scream 3 videotape, this is not about like a cultural endorsement from me now. It's just about raw honesty. And I worry / think that the first piece of music I owned or bought or was given might have been that song, which is just something I have to live with. That's like for the rest of my life, which is fine.
It's weird that he sort of captured the public imagination so much, isn't it? Because when you look at him, terrifying creature, very.
He's objectively, it's horrifying. Like
yeah,
you said, he is absolutely terrifying to look at. Even with the kindest, warmest, most nostalgic eyes, the idea of putting that in front of a child seems kind of like borderline abusive. And that man dominated a lot of airtime. There must be so many of them around the world that really speak to like a place and a time. Like anyone outside of the UK looking at it would be like, I'm sorry, what? Anyone now looking at it would be like, excuse me, sorry, hello. Is this real life, or have I just wandered into somebody else's like residual LSD trip? Yeah.
It's funny how we don't question things. I don't think I've ever questioned to myself internally, where did he come from, Mr. Blobby?
I should have done this research and I didn't because I'm shit. But I would love to know like who wrote the song, whose idea was it, what like label put it out. There must have been like, I imagine, like boardrooms full of A&R guys and label people being like, let's do this. Like, was it a charity single? Was it not? Like, who endorsed it?
Must have been.
Yeah, I mean, you'd fucking hope so.
You could ever write a sort of, is what you're saying, that you want to be the person that pens the next 2024 version of Blobby.
Who is 2024's Blobby?
You know what? I actually think it's still Blobby. Funny that you said, imagine putting him on a stage now, because I went to go and see Self-Esteem at Hammersmith Apollo, I think at the end of last year, and she brought him out on the encore. Blobby came out and did this dance to one of her songs, and everyone, I think she has a crowd, you know, I think there's a lot of like late 20s, early 30s, basically prime Blobby nostalgia time. Everyone lost their minds. It was like she brought out like Macca or something.
I also think that even if, I mean, obviously the atmosphere at Self-Esteem shows is amazing and completely like electric anyway. But
what are you going to say?
I imagine that even if you brought Mr. Blobby out as a brand new concept with no level of nostalgia involved, people would lose their minds in positive and negative ways anyway. I think like just on a purely visual basis, the second that he waddles out and those eyes start to roll uncontrollably, like everyone's losing their mind. I don't care where you are or what you know or what you don't know. Like, for better or worse, it's you're in a waking fever dream / nightmare. So
remember,
but yeah, no, sure. I mean, like, you know, Kate Bush had her moment with Stranger Things. I don't say. I mean, I am a massive Kate Bush fan, so I don't mean to be reductive in saying that. But, you know, she had a little resurgent minute with running up that hill. You know, maybe this year it's Blobby's turn.
It's Blobby's time. Yeah, he could.
Yeah.
How many monthly listeners do you think Mr. Blobby has?
You're going to have the answer to this.
I'm going to find out, so you can put your wages in.
Oh God!
Now.
I mean, it's either going to be literally one, and it's Dan, or it's going to be like a horrifying amount, like an amount that makes you sort of.
We've done our research and we're tracing all of these listens back to one location in South London, and yet somehow he's still the largest streaming artist in the world right now.
But also the kind of cultural figures around Mr. Blobby are not very positive.
No, not at all.
I mean,
they're really not.
Rolf Harris, and I think
it's from a very troubling set of media figures and a very troubling time, and which is interesting and complicated in and of itself. So I think I have to be very selective. You know, I have to circle off Mr. Blobby and ignore everything and anything around it. What are we saying?
I'm going to say it. Yeah. Sort of.
But I mean, there's a Mr. at the start of it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So it was written by Philip, a novelty song performed by the character Mr. Blobby. It was number one on the 11th of December for 1 week, but reclaimed the top slot to become Christmas number one that year. Fantastic. Written by David Rogers and produced by Paul Shaw and David Rogers. So that's
okay.
That we'll never hear from. They're living on a yacht. Hawaii.
Despite its chart success, it has been critically panned by critics, often naming it as one of the worst songs ever recorded. Guys, Wikipedia says it, so that is fact. It's tricky, isn't it? Because it's like certain sort of not okay people were in the video. But also Carol Vorderman was in it, and she's, you know, look at her now. She's like such an amazing voice for justice and holding political figures to account. So, you know, maybe it's not all bad.
Hope you've enjoyed talking about your youth. Do you think about it much? Do you talk about it much?
As we get older, me and my sister, like she's had kids now, and so like I guess you start to see in them growing up, you start to, I guess, I'm really close to them, so you sort of compare it back to your childhood a bit, which sort of brings that stuff back up again in quite a funny way. And obviously with the mates that you have still from that time, you talk about it.
And we live in the digital cameras had just come out for us, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of photographic evidence.
There's some photographic evidence. I think people like our age very luckily hit on a sweet spot where stuff just wasn't as online and as recorded as it is now. So I think there was like, anyway, but it's funny to think back to that stuff. And I think like, being in a band, there's a lot of people in my position, as the lead singer of a band who've done okay, to like, who love to, I don't know, invent a bit of a character around who they are, or try and maintain like a level of cool or bravado or whatever. And I've seen a lot of our peers, do that to varying degrees of success. And with some people it feels really genuine, with others it feels like bullshit. But I've just always been a bit embarrassing, and I've never tried to. I love what we make, and I love getting obsessed, and I'm quite serious about the stuff that we make, and that stuff. But as a person, I've always been a bit of a loser. So why the fuck would I pretend? So it's quite nice. It's quite nice to air that. But some like to sort of join the dots between the Mr Blobby song, embarrassing flammable tiger onesie, and a Scream 3. Pirate video in an already defunct form of visual watching, and somehow in the midst of that Venn diagram, that quite specific Venn diagram, sits me, who somehow still has a job. So yeah, good to celebrate.
And that was Dan Smith of Bastille. Lovely Dan. We had a nice chat with Dan, didn't we?
You know what? I think there are some bands that are so far away in your periphery that you sort of don't really expect to hear personal stories, and Dan Smith has done that for me. I never thought I'd speak to Dan. I never thought I'd hear kind of childhood stories from Bastille. In a way, they're kind of a bit cool for that, right? My perception of them is too cool.
They're very famous, aren't they? Like, I think Dan's one of those people. Although, you know what? I would say, though, that he is the most famous person that I see regularly just wandering around at gigs. Like, he's quite sort of one of the people, he's like a regular fixture, just like you'll just see him like bumbling through a festival field, or just like turning up at like Brixton Academy. Oh, maybe not Brixton Academy at the moment, but soon to be returned Brixton Academy. So he's one of us, as he also demonstrated through the medium of podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, maybe go back and listen to the previous episodes. We've already had equally delightful, in very different ways, different people, different ways, different stories, with Sigrid and Olivia Dean. There will be another episode next Tuesday, and then the Tuesday after that, and heck, maybe even the Tuesday after that as well.
Rolling like a river. No? Anyone? Okay.
Exactly that, yes. So if you did like that chat with Dan and us, maybe you could go and like the podcast on Apple or Spotify or whatever platform you're listening to it on. Maybe you could go and give us a little subscribe so that you get the next one direct into your inbox. Maybe you could give us a review. That would be nice. And then if you like the podcast...
Dang. Lisa, you're on fire this week. You'll
probably like DIY Magazine as a whole. Our new issue is out now. It's got Lauren Maybury from Churches. It's got, I'm going to call it, a pretty exclusive first chat from her new solo era. She goes deep into what people can expect. We've got all of the goss from her recent American tour. It's a great issue. Go give that a read. Go to DIY-mag/shop to give it a purchase, or you can't actually subscribe to it. Just read it. Just read it. It's fine, isn't it? We will see you again next week for another episode of Before They Knew Better with DIY Magazine. Bye.